Hey, I'm joined by my good friend Brooke Burgess, who I've known for I think about 20 years now, my friend. I
Nice
think
squad.
I think the first time we met was you coming in for an audition for Electric Playground because you've done a little bit of everything. And that's why I wanted to talk with him. I think that, in my career, I've had the opportunity to meet lots of fascinating people, but a lot of people that I talk to kind of stick with a track. They start in game development and they keep working with teams for a very long time, and that's fascinating too. But Brooke has bounced around and worked on a million different projects, and he's a fascinating gentleman. He's done some on-camera stuff. He's done a lot of writing. He's done some voice work. He's worked in AAA games. He's worked in mobile, and I think most recently, I think one of the biggest presentations of your work was when at the iPhone 7 keynote, the big mobile game that you have been working on with this game studio. It's called Oz: The Broken Kingdom. Was revealed to the world up on stage at the Apple event, and that must have been a big deal. We're going to talk a little bit about The Cat's Maw, which is the new book that he wrote. He also wrote Broken Saints, and turned that into a pretty amazing transmedia property. And you've got other mobile games working with Iron Maiden. Must have been crazy. And a little bit more about you, but let's talk specifically about. First of all, welcome to my basement, and welcome to EP.
Thank you. It's good to finally be in your basement. It's something we've been talking about for, gosh, I think since the start of Saints, like after we first met and after the Greedy Productions thing. And
Yeah.
that production company name stuck with me forever because you're the most like affable and one of the most generous guys I met as far as your time and your energy when I was in Vancouver. And yet your company logo was this bag of money. And I'm like, I was trying to reconcile and it just never left my. So
Well,
that's
that
pretty cool.
that was an old boss of mine. I was working as a waiter, and I needed a lot of shifts because I was saving money to build my company. And he said, "You're very greedy, but in a good way." And when somebody calls you greedy, you never forget that. And so that was the name that I thought of, and I like the tongue-in-cheek play on that. But anyways, enough about that. Tell me a little bit about Oz and this project and how you came in to be involved with Oz. It's Oz: The Broken Kingdom, right?
Oz Broken Kingdom. Yeah, it's been a really fascinating journey, and it was something that completely came out of the blue. When the book, and we'll get back to that later, when the Cat's Maw came out and was well received critically and got some like great buzz and some wonderful reviews and a few awards, uh, things kind of came full circle from my gaming days. I didn't have plans to go back into games, although if the right project came along where I could really be passionate about the story. I was like, yeah, it just hadn't clicked in a while. I haven't really felt right about a project. And then you have this kind of flashback to the past, my EA days where I got started on games on the Need for Speed team. I had my old boss who like taught me almost everything I knew in the game industry, Scott Blackwood, the current, the head of founder of this game studio, get in touch and say, hey, congrats on the book. So we're kind of cooking something here. Would you like to chat about it? And we started talking, and his thing was like, "Do you think something could be done with Oz? We're looking at the mobile space, and the mythology is really, really deep. How about you read the books and give us a couple of takes on how this could, be gamified, how this would work, how you could lay a story on top of these RPG elements and these card kind of battling elements and the resource based elements and kind of the free to play space, but do it in a way that hadn't been done by
Right.
anybody else with this in depth." And so I read Baum's original books and was kind of blown away. It's deceptively deep. It doesn't seem that way. But then you realize there are these really cool, like, kind of feminist themes which are current. There's like political stresses, tensions between like the 99% and the 1% kind of hinted at in the literature. Hints of like the potential for the darkness of addiction with magic. All of these things were there, and I'm like, we could do something timely and kind of current and almost reimagine the story. We're still keeping the original mythos. You still have Dorothy and the Wizard and all of these primary characters that people know and love from the film and from the books. But how would it feel like for someone modern in
Yeah.
like modern times, war-torn times, with culturally strained times, entering into this world? How would they react to it versus the gosh golly kind of feeling of the original books? And that's kind of where we took it, the idea of civil war, the idea of unrest, the idea of magic, which had been kept in the hands of the very one, but of course Ox has this really dark and potentially addictive quality. It overtakes the denizens of Oz, and then here comes a human, and it affects her differently as well. What does that mean? How will that play out? And for me, most importantly, I really wanted to see what happens to these characters who went on the original quest, specifically Tin Man, Lion, and Scarecrow, who were lacking brain, were lacking courage, were lacking heart. Well, now it's been decades upon decades in this world, and they've become these archetypes of the exact opposite, these archetypes of intelligence and of courage and of strength and empathy. What would it be like to be with these legends who had now swung the pendulum in their own behavior and become these things? How would they behave? How would they be changed? And how could they be seen through the lens of this young girl who's really, like, been in the trenches and seen some bad stuff in our world, and suddenly she's in this magical utopia? What does that mean? How would that feel? And that's kind of what I pitched, and everyone seemed to be really game, pardon the pun, for it. And we took it from there. It's been a year writing the story.
That's amazing. You can see the amount of work in it when you boot it up, not just in the visual fidelity, and I think that's the big reason why it was shown off at the Apple keynote, but
Sure.
there is a tremendous amount of fiction that has been crafted and built up for it. But there's also, as with any kind of modern mobile title that's sort of looking to, embrace this free to play model, there's a tremendous amount of exposition and information to kind of guide you through how to play and how ultimately it starts to make money for Nexon and this game studio. Do you write all of that stuff too, or was your work purely just based on the fiction?
My thing was like, I'm not a pro in that regard. I know my strengths and I know my weaknesses. That's
Yeah.
one thing about getting. I'm sure you'll agree. But my thing with the studio was like, okay, let me, in any moments where a character is going to be explaining the dynamics and the systems of the game to the player,
Right.
can I come and tweak the voice? Can I come in and make it sound like Ophelia, make it sound like Ozma, make it sound like the Crystal Cat and these other characters? So you really get a sense that anything that's being said in the game is being said from a place of genuine personality. Because it's a subtle little thing, it's a tiny thing, but as you get further and further in the story, when you're laying out kind of the parameters of character, you're seeing shifts in character motivation. It means that much more when something big happens.
Right on. Awesome.
It's consistent the whole way through with character.
How much back and forth was there between, the work that you were building, the sort of the game that this game studio wanted to build, based on the story that you guys were building together, and what Nexon wanted as a property, but also understanding the confines of a brand that's incredibly well known. I mean, this is a beloved universe, this Oz universe, and people have their preconceptions of it, and what is in the game is definitely not what we remember from the movies.
We were given, at least this game studio, because they were bringing such an incredible system and structure to how the game was being made, and the design was just mind-blowingly cool. As I was pouring through what they had planned, I'm like, okay, I hope the story can do all of this work justice. It's going to be beautiful, it's going to be deep, it's going to be smart, it's going to be addictive, it's going to be all of these things.
Yeah.
But Nexon was surprisingly, they just really gave a lot of trust. I think the mix of savvy veterans and really talented upstarts and rogues at this game studio were able to say, hey, let us do this, we're going to do this, we're going to do this well.
Right.
With God.
Right.
As long as it passes all of the quality tests and it can work on all these systems, go crazy. So there, I think the second thing you said that was more important was about, we wanted to be, and there was a talk of this from the beginning. It's like, we want to bring in the key factors of Oz are like a whimsy, a real sense of whimsy, that kind of magical awe and wonder. But at the same time, these themes that we discussed, right? Like the themes of what it means to be alive, what it means to be conscious, what it means to be human, what it means to be able to make choices, the consequences of actions, the repercussions of using magic, which is kind of like, the essence of something beyond ourselves, what it means to have a lot of power versus very little. And the theme, which is so present in Baum's books, which is, embedded into the design of the game, which is one of transformation. What does it mean to change and to
Right.
grow? And these great changes that those legendary characters have been through, Scarecrow, Lion, Tin Man, and others, did it affect them purely in a positive way?
Right.
Take a look at that because it's never just black and white. It's never just a binary thing. And I really wanted to dig into that. So we were given a lot of freedom, and the team at this game studio were really open to a lot of the things that was pitching as far as where we're taking the story and characters, and being open to these ideas of, okay, it's not just a mustache twirling villain. It's not just people doing good because they feel like they have to. Everything's being challenged, and Ophelia Shen, the new protagonist, who's kind of the new version of the Dorothy character, who comes into this world, is constantly challenging these different figures and characters and villains or authority figures, and saying, why are you being that way? Like, what does it mean to be you? Why should I be a certain way? What does goodness mean?
Right.
Just because you're powerful, does that make you better? And having those voices there all the time, questioning everyone's objectives, just makes for richer characters and a richer storytelling experience.
It's out on the market out there already. People are playing this game right now. How is it doing? What's the reception like? Are people happy?
Oh, it's been an absolute. I was blown away. I knew how capable Scott Blackwood and Heather Price and Chris Coe and the founders of this game studio were at making these relationships like with Nexon and trumpeting things. But when the Apple thing happened, everyone's jaws dropped. No one had an idea what was going to happen. They kept it secret. And then the response after that, sure, you can have the big bomb drop, but the fallout afterwards, the dust can settle very quickly and people can go, that didn't happen. I think it's editor's choice in Apple, in over 100 Apple and Android shops worldwide. The response on the forums has been really rabid when you're following the hashtags on Twitter, and we're looking in different places at the reviews from actual users, not only from the campaign mode but also from the PvP mode. There's a really rich PvP, and the team is there tweaking it constantly based upon user feedback. They're really passionate about giving players and users a deeply satisfying experience, and not just an also ran.
That's awesome. Well, I know Scott, and I actually shared a cab with him from the airport to our hotels at San Francisco at GDC, and he didn't tell me what the project was, but he told me that he was working with you. But the thing that I picked up from him, this is Scott Blackwood, the guy that runs this game studio, is that he really made that transfer to the mobile space from AAA, and he is fully invested in mobile. He doesn't really play the mobile game or the AAA stuff that much anymore. His attention has been on how to make great games in this mobile kind of world, and clearly he's been doing something right. I've just merely scratched the surface with Oz. That was going to be my question: is how do you keep people, because this is a narrative-driven sort of role-playing game with card battling elements in it, but it feels like there's a through line and possibly an ending to this story. But how do you keep people playing? When you've got a free-to-play juggernaut like this, and it sounds like PvP is the way that they're doing it.
PvP is the way to do it, and as they kind of pitched to me to help me understand, because I had been a console guy before, and I'd appreciated mobile experiences, but usually just Twitch ones or puzzle ones, and I hadn't really played an RPG, an epic RPG title on mobile. And the way they were pitching it was listen, similar to the serial stories that you love, the Twin Peaks and the Prisoners and the Losts and the things like this, and the Buffys and the whatever, the story you're going to be telling, if it's compelling enough and the characters are interesting enough, through dialogue alone, you don't have big cut scenes, right? You've got the intro cinema and some really short cut scenes before and after boss battles, but it's really the two characters sliding in dialogue scenes are driving the story forward, and if you do that effectively, people will want to know what happens next. So you've got that. You've got an incredibly fun, rich, challenging guild-based PvP thing, and of course you've also got the classic gaming hook, which is for the completists, the people who want to get all the cards, get all the spells, get all the abilities, get all the gem crafting done. They want to have everything, to have the ultimate experience, and to have their character evolve. To change to the different forms as they do, right? Ophelia, Tin Man, Scarecrow, and the Lion, and also some other playable characters coming, get to evolve through different stages of their look, of their abilities. It's pretty damn cool.
Awesome, dude. Well, you wrote the story, or helped to conceive a lot of the story, at least for Oz, but you also worked on this Iron Maiden game, which is, I think, probably the last game from the game company that built. Yes.
Rest in peace, Roadhouse. There's some good folks there And they had a really, really good vibe. It was another case for me, which was fascinating. After the book came out, before Scott got in touch, another old compatriot slash mentor from my EA days, Tarny Williams, he got in touch after the book released and did quite well, and said, hey, I'm not sure what your schedule is like, whether you're diving into the next book, working on some screenplay or secret project, but they were kind of working on something. They were cooking up a few things there, and asked if I wanted to kind of come in and maybe offer like a narrative eye. And I said, yeah, I'd definitely be interested. I had a great experience with him. Just to backtrack a bit, my connection with him in the old school EA days. If you remember the launch of the PS2, which I'm sure you do, one of the launch titles was a localized, a translated version of Koei's epic game Kessen, the feudal warfare.
Yes.
And Tarny was in charge of that. And basically, we had a relationship then. And I said, okay, so who's doing your writing? He's like, well, we have a translation that's, it's a really bare bones translation from Japanese. And I pitched, hey, how about rewriting this in the style of Akira Kurosawa's Ran, making it Shakespearean and having it have that tone, a little tongue in cheek, but definitely having it feel like a historical epic. And he's like, there are a lot of lines in this. And I say, gimme. And yeah, it turned into not only one of the most satisfying little gigs of my career, like rewriting thousands of lines of dialogue.
Wild.
But because we also had to match to 3 hours, because that's a massive CG experiment too back in the day. 3 hours of CG characters. And so we were going in and had to match to flaps for those characters with translation. So I was rewriting and then Tarny said, well, you know what? You also had experience from your Need for Speed days of voice directing. How about you work with the casting director and, we get the right cast and you direct them and then rewrite on the fly to make sure it works with how they can mouth it. And I'm like, okay. And so that was such a valuable experience for Saints and other things later, because the casting thing was a concentrated, like 3 months, go, 7 days a week of rewriting in this. So I had a really warm feeling about Tarny, about how much latitude he had given me back in the day and faith he had in me.
He's an amazing guy.
And so he is. And when he got in touch, I was like, wow, okay, he wouldn't have got in touch unless he had faith I could kind of do this. And so he came in and I made some contributions to a couple of their in-house projects. But the one, of course, he kind of one day we were driving back to the North Shore, because I've been traveling around Asia for a while, and I was getting my sea legs back to Vancouver. And he's like, did you ever used to listen to heavy metal when you were younger? I'm like, yeah, totally. I'm an old school. And he's like, so did you ever listen to Iron Maiden? I'm like, are you kidding me? At one of the Broken Saints concerts, like I sang Run to the Hills like an idiot. Like I love it. And he's like, well, okay, so here's kind of what we're doing, this free-to-play RPG, but really based around the mythology that is either overtly or covertly hinted at throughout the albums. Is there a way you think you could kind of fashion a narrative that kind of ties this mythology together in a game-driven way? And yeah, I just went home and cooked it up for a couple of weeks and came back and did the pitch. And it's not a secret, basically, the idea that Eddie the Head, the skeletal kind of zombie-esque character, is almost I think he's akin kind of, although they don't necessarily like to say this, I think he's akin kind of to like the Spectre from the DC universe, the spirit of vengeance, almost like one hand of the divine, but he would never belong to like the organized religion aspect of it. But yeah, he's almost this otherworldly divine-esque power. But he's sitting there in the void. It's after all these adventures of all the albums. He's sitting there in the void, kind of like in a rest state until he's called again. But a darker force, perhaps tied to his ancient nemesis, the Beast, is able to rip through the void and tear him apart, explode into different facets of himself, and they fall into different dimensions and time periods. And so you're broken down into the core version of Eddie, who must go and seek those aspects of himself out that have corrupted all these different time periods and worlds. Basically, I was taking the essence of an old Hindu myth, and it just seemed to transplant so well into this mythology. And then there you go, they got the story.
That's amazing, dude. And I think you've just underlined how much people work, especially if they're good at their game and they keep working, even on what we consider small little mobile games. And it's clear that you put tons of effort and thought into the presentation and the storytelling that's going into everything that you're going to be putting out there. Were you happy with the way that the Iron Maiden game came together?
Absolutely. Not only did I get to work with people I wanted to work with again for a long time, I also got to work with people who ended up being students that had graduated from a game design course at like the old school CIS, and then AI kind of slid in. But before then, the CIS gang
Yeah.
taught game design and storytelling and film and public speaking for 3 years there during the Broken Saints years to make the ends meet. And I was really passionate about what I was doing. And some of my best students happened to be on the Roadhouse team. And so it was just such a nice surprise,
That's so
this weird
cool.
sort of reunion. And to see how much they had grown in that time frame of like, 12 plus years, see how much they had grown, to see what the design was at, to see what they were doing, and to see. I think we had this talk a long time ago. Working within limitations can sometimes be the best thing.
Yep.
It's like when you work on the old NES and you go, okay, we have this limited visual, this limited audio, and this limited memory. How do we tell our story and make the game compelling? Same thing with mobile, right?
Yeah.
It's like with
And in indie development as well, there's been a huge move back to, doing more with less.
Simplification. I'm probably going to go on a tangent, but we are kind of chatting.
Yeah.
One of my favorite games that obsessed me over like probably for about a month from end of August till about maybe a week ago was Reigns. I'm not sure if you played it, but it became a huge cult mobile hit, especially in Europe over the last month. And this was like not a free to play, but a pay up front. But the word of mouth was so cool that they were able to take this kind of Game of Thrones meets Tinder meets choose your own adventure sort of thing and do it in this really compelling way. I talk about it on one of my blogs recently that they were able to combine all these things that can be like sticky aspects of gameplay with a compelling narrative and build it in a way that anyone could sit and one-handed on a subway, but you also start to like care.
Sure.
It really was a game that showed what could do. And I think that that's the thing, what they did with the Iron Maiden free-play RPG that was so satisfying was they worked within the limits of the medium really well.
Mm-hmm.
They're able to showcase a certain graphical style. They're able to really, really play into the strength of the music, which is why so many of the old school, and like, most people underestimate, especially maybe the youngins, underestimate how much pull and how much stroke, as we say, Maiden still has. There's a reason that Documentary Flight 666 did so well. When you take a look at their concert in Rio from like whatever it was 5 years ago, like you see 80,000 people bouncing up and down, banging their heads. They have a passionate following. And so there was that knowledge that no matter what we did, and the team was always knowing no matter what they did, those were people who were going to gravitate towards this first. So they had to honor not just the mythology, but most importantly, the music. The coolest thing blew my mind was having access, thanks to the band and thanks to their management, how cool the studios were, having access to like some of the original song stems to be able to mix them in and have them build with the action, have the song fill out.
So Roadhouse is done now, though. Can people still get the game and play the game? Or
absolutely, a core team. I think it was announced that a core team, the Iron Maiden team from Roadhouse, has been pulled in, contracted. They have some sort of arrangement. I'm not privy to this now, but they're working with this Nodding Frog. I think that's the name of it, out of the UK, tied with Maiden's management company. So they're still developing more because it started off, I think, with four major worlds and like the first act of the story. In the same way that Oz, though I wrote this kind of like book's worth of dialogue, it was always meant to be, like in Baum's Tales, it's meant to be this first volume of the story. So there's some closure, but the world also. And those are the stories I love, right? Those are the stories
Well, you're an author and you've written a book. And first of all, we have to let everybody know that the reason why we're getting this hitchy video and some hitches in our audio is Brooke is in Morocco. What part of Morocco right now are you in?
Right now, I am in one of the infamous little surfing villages known as Tagazout. It's on the Atlantic coast, about halfway down. I'd always wanted to come to North Africa. I'd heard this is a good place for, I'm not sure if your listeners or watchers know the term digital nomad, but apparently it's a thing where folks like a laptop go somewhere with half decent Wi-Fi and slightly, more affordable standard of living. And so hotspots are like Asia, North Africa, Southeast Asia, specifically Thailand, Vietnam, what have you. Bulgaria, which is a new place. Bolivia is a place where
you can live cheap, you can eat well, and you've got access to the internet. You can do your work and have some adventure.
And you're not cold.
And you're not cold. Yeah.
I'm Canadian in citizenship only, but not by blood. I get the wind, and especially Vancouver well. I was there for 20 years. You know it like the
Yeah.
back of your hand. The 6 months of gray would just
Yep. They're good for gaming though. For my
they're
job,
great.
yeah, for
They're
my
great for
job, it's good
me.
for just chilling in the basement and playing these games. Absolutely. Yeah.
For sure.
Okay, well, you're in Morocco, and I want to go off on a little tangent here. You've done this experiment. I think you did a pilot for the Travel Channel. Tell us a little bit about that, because I think, as part of your travels to write and to kind of ensconce yourself in all kinds of crazy culture out in the world out there, you realize that there might be some kind of a cool program out there. And I actually watched your pilot. You tweeted a link to it, and I watched it, and I was like, yeah, this is a unique thing. I think you did a terrific job hosting, and you made a kind of an Anthony Bourdain kind of style travel show that I would totally watch. But tell us what the concept is.
Oh, that's cool. Well, actually, again, another like all these things come from connected tissue of people that you know, as you know so well from your
Yep.
history of working with folks, relationships that you build. The a producer on Saints DVD days, a fellow named Jonathan Wagner. He got in touch and was like, "Hey, my son is running this really successful reality TV company, has a slate of programs. But we've been hearing that a couple of the travel networks, the usual suspects, the Nat Geos, the travel channels, whatever, are kind of hunting around for an ongoing adventure show that has a bit of a spiritual angle. Doesn't have to be super heavy, because there are a few already heavier documentary styles
Yeah.
out there. And even Bourdain himself had done a few episodes of Parts Unknown, and a few episodes of what was his awesome one that I love so much. It's escaping me right now.
Yeah.
No Reservation.
Right. No reservations. Yeah. Yeah.
And he did a few that had that theme, because he's an incredibly intelligent guy and a cultured guy, and he really likes to go deeper than just the, hey, this tastes great, but he can play that angle too.
Yeah.
And I said, okay, well, that's a really intriguing thing. And okay, I'm game, and I made my suggestions, and here's how I shape it, and I recorded a little bit of just a promo about myself and some of the things I'm passionate about and what I'd like to see in a show like this. And I forgot all about it. I was actually in town doing the Iron Maiden stuff at the time, or at least working on the foundation for it. And I went back to Thailand, which was often my go-to place. It's a really easy place for a digital nomad to be, and you've got fiber optics, so that was cool too. I think a connection. And so yeah, and got a call from Skype from the producer, basically saying, hey, you got time to talk for 15, 20 minutes? Can
Yep.
you just be ready? I said yes. And so the window opens up, and there he is, and there's his son, and they're like, we're being joined by, and it was like the head of development for a major cable network. I
Yeah.
can't too many specifics,
Yeah.
but they're like, Brooke, nice to meet you. We saw this demo and we love this concept. We're looking for programming like this, and we want to know a little bit more about you. And I'm like, oh crap, I'm on the spot. And okay, and just talked about the things I was passionate about, and some of my travels and the projects I'd done that had kind of been infused with a bit of a spiritual message or essence in some way. And they seemed to dig it, and they're like, okay, we want to commission the shooting of, shoot a pilot, tell us like a mini pilot, 20 minutes. The normal show would be 42, and pitch us what you want to do, where you want to do it. And it just turned out, with the budget constraints and with the time, because they wanted it fast, it just made sense to look at, because the idea is the pilgrimage. That's, if you go to my site, burgess.com, if you look on YouTube, you can see the featured video of the pilgrimage. And the idea is that every major spiritual tradition, and some of the minor ones too, all have infused in kind of their mystical DNA the idea of a quest, right? As part of the hero's journey. It's not just a storytelling Star Wars thing, then. Hey, Star Wars came from Taoism. Like, all of these things have a sense of a quest for conquering the dark side of the self, overcoming enlightenment, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah. The
Atonement,
Force.
forgiveness. Yeah.
Yeah.
And yes. and the neat kind of the irony, or less of the irony, a nice kind of synchronicity with the fact that I had gone on one in 2000, kind of a specific spiritual goal or any religious kind of allegiance whatsoever, but I had done the fairly well known, the famous Santiago de Compostela, the Camino, which starts in southern France and goes across the breadth of Spain. And that's like a 5.5 week walk where you're staying in people's houses where they have the symbol with the clamshell. And it's kind of like, it was the old road to the burial place of St. James, the Knights Templars set up to kind of keep the Moors at bay in North Africa into Spain. And it's this walk that takes like 850 plus kilometers.
That's fantastic.
And yeah, and you're waking up every day and you're walking with your backpack and your stick and you're kind of carrying your burden along with you.
Yeah.
And the idea is to release your burden at the end and kind of like, release less your sins, but more of the weight you've been carrying, kind of see what life's really about. And it was such a cool experience. I started researching pilgrimages.
Yeah.
And realized there are a ton. And so the format of the show is that. What if each week you've got someone, like myself, taking somebody onto a pilgrimage that maybe like lines up with their faith, or maybe something that they've been curious about or inspired by, and watching their transformation along the way, maybe nudging it along in a playful way. So the person traveling with me is the audience, right? But I get to kind of be there and have some experience, but not a lot. So I'm also very open to the experience as well. And it's this kind of like, it's a buddy road trip, but with a spiritual kind of twist to it.
Right.
And Thailand had one, Theravada Buddhism, a specific form of Buddhism. It was the religion of choice in Thailand, and it developed as part of their culture, their history, their alphabet. And there is this pilgrimage, essentially this 330 kilometer plus kind of pilgrimage from Bangkok, or even further south if you want to go, up to a town called Sukhothai, which was like the seat of the old Thai kingdom, and beautiful ruins, kind of like a mini Angkor Wat in Cambodia. And so, there was a fellow I knew who had married a Buddhist woman, married a Thai woman, and he's like this wonderful chef, kind of like a foul-mouthed, grumpy mini Bourdain.
Yeah.
And I'm like, he would be perfect. He would be absolutely perfect. And we put it together and we shot it over. I wouldn't say planes, trains, and automobiles, but you kind of get the deal. It was like, there's farm vehicles and trains and on foot and, bicycles and all this stuff. And it was a crazy, fun experience.
How many crew members were with you guys? Two. Yeah, you guys did a good job. I was very impressed with the storytelling and the editing and the camera work and your hosting and your colleagues' cantankerous kind of tones. I enjoyed all of that stuff. And I'm curious. There's something about all of this stuff that I think a lot of the people that watch my content are people that have a deep love and a fascination for the content that we talk about, the games, the movies, all of that stuff. But I think there's also a faction of that group of people that wants to do this kind of work, and that's why I really wanted to talk with you, because I think that you exemplify the adventurous spirit of someone that wants to be creative in times that are limitless but also challenging, because you kind of have to break through the noise in a myriad of different ways to get your product out there and to be seen and to be heard and to be recognized, so you can keep getting paid. But I think that reinvention that you're capable of is fascinating.
Is fascinating.
Thank you.
It's a fascinating story. But do you think, and would you recommend that for other storytellers out there, that they explore spiritualism and religion and things like that?
Okay. Well, first off, what they have to do, and I would say this to my students, again, another full circle back to the students that I met on the Iron Maiden project. One of the things I preached to my game design and narrative students was that you can't, like, when people go, oh yeah, I want to make a really, really cool mythology, kind of like Lord of the Rings. And I'm like, you do realize that Lord of the Rings drew upon, Norse, and drew upon, Gnostic Christianity, and drew upon there are older stories than the ones we're regurgitating and creating that sense of, simulacrum, right? Yeah. That whole danger that we have of just pop eating itself. And the best way to experience those original stories is to A, travel, and B, look at the cultural and spiritual traditions of the place that you travel.
Right.
Because there's a reason those stories resonate with us in some way. There's a reason why, I bring this up all the time. We've talked about Star Wars too. Like, Star Wars isn't my bag, but I dig it and I understand why people resonate with it so much, because it's beyond just, hey, lightsabers and cool and Millennium Falcon and Han Solo and this and cool and that and just the basic hero's journey.
Yeah, it has that, but it has another layer. Yeah.
Well, and the other layer, this thing about the Force that really resonated with people and continues to resonate with people, it's Taoist.
Yeah.
This is like old school Eastern. This is Lao Tzu, Eastern philosophy, 1 foot on earth, 1 foot in heaven stuff. And that spiritual strain, if you can't see that Yoda is essentially like, you know, a Taoist master, you're not paying attention. And the same thing with a huge breakout film like The Matrix in '99, the first one only, please. That film did so incredibly well worldwide, as we all know, and anyone watching knows. But it wasn't just because of bullet time and guns and cool kung fu. The Matrix was a Buddhist parable. You are sitting in illusion and it's not real, and suddenly you get a glimpse of what the real world is, and you feel compelled to wake others up to the truth of it. That's what the Matrix was. That's a Buddhist parable. And if people suddenly felt moved by it and they weren't sure why, that's because it spoke to something deeper in them. I honestly believe that. Same with the series that I made, like Broken Saints. That was the whole point of it, right? I think that when we look at the anime that we love, when you look at the Akiras and the Ghost in the Shells, they ask questions about consciousness and identity and, you know, connection to something larger than ourselves in some way, whether it's good or bad. That plays into the stuff that you know your fans watch. Same with sci-fi and fantasy.
Yep.
And the really, really cool games that resonate. It's not just from an emotional space. A lot of times that emotion hits us more deeply because there is this undercurrent. This doesn't have to be hitting you over the head with a hammer,
No.
but this undercurrent of something more.
Absolutely.
And powerful and shapes people, right? And that's just something that always spoke to me. And I realized that I might not end up making, you know, the biggest, most populist, most top of the charts stuff often in my life. But what I can do, you know, before I end up in the ground or wherever, what I can do is kind of make stuff that has some sense of purpose. And if it inspires people along the way to kind of open their eyes a bit, their hearts a bit, and maybe make their lives a little more rich as a consequence, then maybe I did my job.
And so much of that, I think, you are indebted to the travels that you are always doing, right? This digital nomad existence isn't just a tagline. It isn't just a promotional vehicle for you. You literally live in your suitcase, and you just, every time I see you, it's like you're racing through the city, and the next time I see you, you're on a beach somewhere, and you're posting about some crazy adventure that you've had, some moped that's broken down or something, or some awesome meal that you had, or some bug you have picked up.
Yeah, or getting like Giardia parasites in Laos in the fall, or like something that almost killed. Well, and this is the thing, I have to, I'm not saying that's for, you would ask the question, I probably rambled a bit, but you would ask the question for the readers, or not the readers, for the listeners and the watchers out there who are considering storytelling, or already are storytellers and are moving towards like an interactive path. Is there something about my journey that could work for them, that I recommend? And travel, I can honestly say, kind of surrendering the old way of being, which is like really structured. Okay, here's the event machine, and here's rent that I pay, here's this.
You can't Google experience, right? You can research the hell out of stuff, but you can't Google experience. Yeah.
No, and I have to honestly say that though I was always passionate for narratives, I loved good storytelling. You know, I liked being an actor when I was young. I liked giving speeches. And I liked, you know, writing little short stories and being silly and doing comedy skits and all this stuff when I was younger. But I think my storytelling ability, and it still has so much to grow, like such a space to grow into, but my storytelling ability didn't kind of take that leap forward, make that little quantum jump forward until travel. It was the backpack experience of the South Pacific that inspired Broken Saints.
Right.
It was a lot of time in Southeast Asia, but also travels through like Central America and a few other places that had an impact on, and also the walk across Spain that inspired some of the screenplays I wrote, that also helped me to kind of push dominoes backwards and realize, oh wow, there's this whole kind of like feline mystical presence in my life from childhood forward, and that came from travels through Asia. And you know, we're just talking about cats being enlightened masters, and I'm like, hey, there's a story there that's tied to my own personal experience. But I wouldn't have had that just by researching it on Google.
Well,
I had to like really.
Let's talk about Cat's Maw, because I think this is a very personal, current project for you. You've written the first book, and it's a series of books that you're planning, right? Encapsulate what your concept is for Cat's Maw.
Okay, well, I don't want to give too much away. I really do like what some of the reviewers have said. One specifically for a really cool teen librarian magazine basically said that it's imagine a modern day Narnia as written by Stephen King.
Cool.
And I went, okay,
Wow.
you got it.
That's pretty amazing.
This is the whole thing, right? I think that for me, and I don't want to say, again, I don't want to seem like the spiritual aspect is clubbing anyone over the head, 'cause it's not like Broken Saints. It's really it's in your face with the spirituality.
Yeah.
This is more subtle. But at the same time, like you read Narnia when you're a kid, or even as an adult, you read it again or watch the films, and it's not a huge leap to understand. It's a little bit of a, there's some Christian allegory
it's the
going
Christian
on
myth.
in the story. Right?
Yeah.
And is, hey, free Jesus, and that's cool. And that idea, and we talked about this at Comic-Con a couple of years ago, it really stuck with me because I couldn't wait to have an opportunity to kind of explain more what I was doing,
Right.
what I had planned. And you were passionate about this. So many of the stories are just about the one hero,
Right.
the classic kind of breaks through. He's filled with goodness, and they're the chosen one, which is okay. And it worked in Harry Potter, and it worked in the Christ Smith, and it worked in this and that, and this and the other thing. Neo, the one. But it's kind of like, I don't know, is that a symptom of our time? It's kind of like the narcissism of only one can save us, and we put our faith into that one that's outside of us. And that could be kind of dangerous, right? It's like you look at 40% of the US going, Trump's the one. Like, that's frightening, right? That's
yes, it is.
pretty terrifying.
Yeah.
But for me, what's really, really interesting about Eastern philosophy, again, I'm not saying I adhere to any one strand of it or that any of it's right, but what's interesting about that from the Hindu Buddhist kind of roots of it is this idea that there isn't a one, that it's kind of an illusion, that everyone together is kind of like the mind of it, of capital E. You know what I mean? It's like there's this, the universe itself is this great kind of being slowly waking up, and the one is just maybe the first person to wake up, and then it ripples out as they interact with others, and then everyone starts to wake up and realize everyone's it. And I loved that concept. I think it's really beautiful, but it hasn't, other than maybe it hinted at in like Avatar: Last Airbender and a few other kind of Eastern stream properties and anime as well. It hasn't really been covered in like a modern kind of Western fable children's story. And for some reason, it just really struck me. And also it made me realize with my travels and with a few kind of semi-mystical things that happened to me, that there was a hook that meant a lot to me. And that hook was the world of felines. I'd had some really interesting experiences when I was young. I was hit by a car when I was 7, almost died. It was like a month after I received a kitten for my birthday, and it was my best friend in this tiny town in the middle of nowhere in Nova Scotia. And I was at the Sick Kids Hospital for 3 weeks getting patched up. And when I was brought home and stuck in a little cot in the main room and put on morphine, and I'm delirious, where's my cat? My mom's like, oh, it's okay, cats grow in the wild, and he's running around the farmland, and it's fine. And I kept having these dreams that, I'm a 7-year-old kid, it's crazy, but I'm having these dreams that my cat's kind of talking to me and not moving its mouth in a silly way, not jungle.
Well, you were on morphine.
Just projecting it. There's that too. But my mom finally admitted when I begged, where, I'm not gonna go outside or do anything until you tell me where my cat is. And she's like, well, your 3rd day at the hospital, when we drove into Halifax to see you, we came home, and sadly he was lying dead in the same spot where he was struck by the car, the exact same spot.
Wow.
And I had a dream that night that I couldn't explain as a kid, but I look back now and I understand what it was. I had a dream that night that basically was saying that it was an exchange. It was like a life for a life sort of deal.
Holy crap.
What I did not know at the time, I know it's kind of weird, folks, I'm sorry, but what I did know at the time was that I was supposed to lose my leg.
Right.
I was supposed to lose my leg. That when I said to my mom, I'm not going to go back and see his grave back on the back of the property near the old colonial graveyard where we hung out because I was a creepy little kid. I'm not going to go back there until I can walk there under my own power. My mom started crying. I'm like, why is she crying? But little did I know that they're like, oh, actually, like in 6 weeks when I go to get checked, chances are I'm going to lose my leg, at least at the knee down. But every night I was having dreams, and my cat would come to me and brush along my leg, kind of like we just had these little adventures floating through whatever. And then I went to get the x-rays 6 weeks later, and the doctor comes out with the scans and kind of is like, wow, aren't aren't you a little miracle? My parents were like, what? And yeah, you've healed a little bit of muscle atrophy, but otherwise you're fine. You won't be able to run anytime soon, but you're okay.
Wow.
And my parents did speak on the way home, and I walked out to the back of the property and I saw a little mound of the grave with the hollyhocks and stuff, and I cried as a little boy does when his first pet dies.
Yeah.
But that really stuck with me, and the dreams kept coming. And then I had cats later in life and forgotten all about that, and there were mystical experiences where they were hopping into my dreams, and I'm like, okay, I'm imagining this and having childhood flashbacks. I'd go away, have a friend look after my cat. I'd come home and they'd be like, Brooke, does your cat hop into dreams? I'm like, this is really weird now. I didn't understand what's happening, but I kind of knew there was this little click, that there was a story there somewhere. And then I went to Asia. And when I went to Asia, when I went to Thailand to kind of learn Muay Thai and go to meditation and kind of just have this cultural experience and change my lifestyle, I was being exposed a lot to the regional Buddhism. And they honestly believe in that part of the world that cats are enlightened masters who have earned this feline life. They are teaching us by coming back after being humans and getting off the wheel of rebirth. They choose to come back as cats to show us how to be perfectly calm and then perfectly focused, because cats don't waste energy.
Right.
They're either sleeping or they're focused on cleaning and eating, or they're hunting, but they don't just they're not a dog, they're a cat. Right. And so you see all of these Buddhist statues covered in cats. You see all the Buddhist monks walking around with cats around their necks, or sitting there watching a cat.
Wow.
And it's really, really cool. And then I started researching a lot of spiritual traditions around the world. It turns out the cats played a role, a lot of them, more than just Egypt where they were worshipped, but they have this kind of mystical quality. And then at the end, to wrap this all up, because I didn't really want to give away plot points too much, but to wrap this all up is a bit of science. And here's something I found incredibly interesting. We are awake approximately 16 hours a day and sleep approximately 8, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. If you're lucky, you get your 8, maybe 7.
Yeah.
Cats are the exact opposite. And not only are they the exact opposite, when they dream, and it's been proven by brain analysis that they actually dream. They're actually having, subconscious movements in their mind. They dream in the same frequency with their brainwaves that we do.
Wow.
So my thing, the kind of Narnia experience, the loving of stuff like Time Bandits and anime and alternate world stuff and quantum theory and what have you, with all this mythology around felines, I'm like, what if what we're seeing as a cat awake in our world only 8 hours is actually, a greater creature, this divine kind of spiritual protector that's dreaming itself into our world for 8 hours a day. And this boy is this horrible accident who starts to dream into their world, and the world starts to come together. It's this kind of big Buddhist parable about, how to face life, how to face death, what it means to make choices, how you can forgive others when you might think they're evil or bad, but really they're there to teach you something about yourself, that kind of thing.
That's incredible, dude. Now, I haven't read your book, and I keep having to apologize to you over direct message on Twitter. It's just many, many things that keep coming in that I have to review and go and see, and I try to be a father as much as I can too. So it is, and Ruby, my daughter, is not of the age to read this book yet, but I have it. I bought it. I bought one of your signed copies from the comic store, Golden Age Collectibles in Vancouver. Yeah. Anyways, I will read that. But one of the cool things that you have done, and I know that this is going to be really cool for Ratchet and Clank fans out there, is David Kay, the voice of Clank, is your narrator for the audiobook, because you have a very long relationship with David, don't you?
Man, oh man, my relationship with Dave is one of the few that's longer than my relationship with you professionally.
Well, interesting is both of you guys auditioned for Electric Playground back in 1995, and it's just a surreal thing to have watched you guys just flourish and do all kinds of really interesting work along the way. And yeah, it's really cool. The world is small, and be good to people, right? But anyways.
Well, absolutely. And Dave inspired, there was a kinship right from the beginning. I really respected his skill set when he was just working in radio at CFox and doing anime voiceover dubs for Ocean Group way back when. And we met each other. This is when I just owned the video game store with Sean Millington of the BC Lions. This was before I was even at Dave and I got to know each other through theater at Deep Cove in North Vancouver, and we were in a couple of shows together, and we we kind of had this friendship and this shared love of kind of creating stuff and characters, but also his thing of voice intrigued me, and he liked that I was writing plays and doing some other things. And then I went to EA, and I think one of the first things, other than my writing ability, to write like cop dialogue and descriptions and text blocks and stuff for the Need for Speed team, and some design for Scott's really cool title, Beetle Adventure Racing, one of the unsung greats on N64.
Oh, that was an awesome game.
Wasn't it though? Like,
Yeah.
and this is another reason why I know we're totally doing the tangents here.
Yeah.
And I'm probably high on rock and coffee, but at the same time, that was another reason why I wanted to work with Scott again. Because at first I was kind of like, okay, my game days are done. But at the same time, not only was he kind of innovative enough and wacky enough and brave enough and had the foresight to go, okay, San Francisco Rush means kind of like Super Mario with these massive adventure worlds on the N64.
Oh yeah, it was so cool.
With the licensed Beetle. It was super cool. There was a real innovation there, and I was impressed. And he kind of like said, okay, take the audio and some other stuff and just run with it. It's yours. So I brought Dave in his voice for that. I brought Dave in for voice for Need for Speed Hot Pursuit. I brought Dave in for when we were here's a little secret nobody knows. We were trying to get Patrick Stewart for the narrator's voice for Kessin. And if we couldn't get him, we were trying to get Avery Brooks. So that was Deep Space Nine and Next Generation.
Yeah.
We couldn't afford either.
Yeah.
And Tarney was freaking out, and I'm like, what's your budget? I know somebody. And brought Dave in, and the thing is, we had to get these narrator chunks down to like tenths of a second. It was like, okay, for 19.2 seconds, you're saying this from the Tokugawa period. And after a couple of warm-ups, Dave was nailing everything to the tenth of a second.
That's
and
awesome.
I'm going to work with you again. I love this guy. And yeah, he moved down to Hollywood. Actually, before he moved down to LA, the big miracle came again with Broken Saints, because we had this massive project. We can talk more about that later. It's the 10th anniversary. But we had this massive project with a cast of like 40 or 50. And I knew who the best voiceover people in town were, but there's no way I could afford them all. There was no way.
Yeah.
We couldn't pay union, and most of them wouldn't work non-union at the time. Except someone of Dave's caliber says, I'm working on this thing non-union for this much. It kind of has a ripple effect, and everyone else is like, oh, Dave's vouching for this guy in this project, maybe we should take a look at it. And that was how we landed such an incredible cast for that. So coming to this point in Cat's Maw, Dave has been down in Hollywood now for, what, a decade plus? Doing amazing work, everything from like, Fox, the voices of Fox Sports, to right now he's like Last Week Tonight with John Oliver doing, and how is this still a thing? And all
That's
the cool
incredible
stuff.
That's amazing.
Ratchet, of course, Beast Wars, Transformers, Megatron. Oh yes, that's Dave. Dave is like, he's everywhere, right? He's ubiquitous, and but so incredibly talented and so giving in his time. And it was interesting because Cat's Maw come out. I always wanted to do an audiobook that was something special, not just so-and-so narrates, which is most audiobooks, with maybe a little hint of fear and the occasional boing sound effect there. I love audio, as you know, and I wanted to do something that was rich and hypnotic and dreamy. I wanted to use my cousin's incredible soundscapes and original orchestrations, and I wanted to bring in effects, and I wanted to really create this haunting, chilling dream space. But you have to have the voice, and not only do you have to have the narrator voice, but you have to have the rare skill, if you don't have a full cast like the BBC can afford, you have to have the rare skill of a narrator who can instantly go, and so said, and then drop into a character voice, and then come back to narrator voice and not do it in broken cuts, to have it be fluid. That takes a level of virtuosity and a singular talent that is rare. And I didn't even think I could approach Dave, because there's no way I could afford him for like 6 weeks to 2 months of recording time that we did over Skype.
Yeah.
Dave got in touch when he saw the trailer for the book trailer for Cat's Maw that I put up. And another great talent in town, Michael Dobson, who played Oran in Broken Saints, been in some of the Batman Black and Whites and some other really great stuff. He had done the trailer poem for that, this kind of the mythology poem book. And but then he got really, really busy, and I'm like, oh crap, I don't know who could possibly do this story justice. And Dave got in touch and said, I'm curious, I'd like to read the book. I'm like, really? He's like, yeah, just send it to me. I'm just, I think that maybe I could bring something to it, but I want to see if I resonate with the material. And I wasn't sure anything would come out of it. I was like, wow, it was really nice. He got in touch. And sent him the book, and less than a week later, he's like, okay, how do we do this?
That's
I'm like,
awesome.
I can only afford to pay you peanuts if that. You get a cut of the back end, and I'll take nothing. I'm actually giving all proceeds of the book to my cousin, the composer and editor and mixer, who I worked with in Berlin for months on end to make this something magic. And the other half goes to Dave. I'm wanted out there because it's really good.
Yeah.
And Dave and I recorded Skype, half of them in Thailand and half of them in Vancouver, and him down in Hollywood in his home studio. We recorded them for almost 2 months, and he made. You might be out there and you started listening to this segment and you went, oh, books, yeah, whatever. I don't have time to read books, whatever. It's not my thing. Or oh,
Who has time for books? Where are the buttons?
Don't need no book, Arden. Okay, I hear you. Slide that away. Go listen to the sample. If you go to my site, or if you hunt for like Cat's Maw audiobook sizzle or anything, go listen.
Well,
just to the free.
Dave does. We do have to wrap this up, and we can certainly talk for a long time and about many, many more things, and we'll definitely do this again when you have fiber next time, by the way. But I do want people to get to know more about you and the work that you're doing, and you just created a new website, right? So what is it?
Hey, yes, please come and visit. I hate when people are hucksters like this, but this is more a case of there's nothing for sale. Just come and see what I've been working on.
Yep.
Learn a little bit more about my background and interface, talk, exchange. BrookeBurgess.com, Brooke, the girl's name version, BrookeBurgess.com. And you'll get to see stuff about Oz Broken Kingdom and about Iron Maiden. Weekly blog post talks about rings, mystical bots, stuff like that. And also Cat's Maw stuff in the upcoming books and a few other cool surprises and videos. And
dude, you're a fascinating human being. And I love that we took the time to get together to do this. I don't think this will be the last time. I think I'm going to have a lot of questions from people that watch this video, and I would expect that you're going to hear from some of them. But I appreciate it. I appreciate all of the adventuring that you're doing. I think it's really inspiring, and it's fun, and it may not be, profitable all the time. I feel like you have to keep sort of jumping from project to project to keep rocking, but I don't think you're bored that often. That's the sense that I get from you, and I get the sense that creatively you have a pretty wonderful dream.
Yeah, I think I am lucky, but at the same time, and this is not blowing smoke back. We've had these talks before, and I'm happy to make it public. It's guys like you with the level of commitment and generosity, and really the foresight for knowing that this platform and this medium was going to blossom and burgeon and grow to what it was. And you were there in the center of it, so passionate about it, and that passion shows through everything you do. And deserve every accolade, every award, all the success to you. Continued for years to come, brother. It was really nice to connect on this forum. Hopefully we can do it again soon.
Absolutely, buddy. And have fun in Morocco. How long are you going to be out there for?
I'll be in Morocco for the 6 weeks or so, plus, and then I think to Asia. Except there are a few interesting offers on the table, so maybe there might be a bit of a sidetrack before then. We'll see.
Awesome.
And I'll let you know.
Awesome. Well, keep track with Brooke Burgess, and thanks to him so much for being on the show. He's an incredible guy, and he always has a fascinating tale. So if you're in Morocco in the next 6 weeks, look him up. I'm sure everybody's going to know where he is.
There are many things to find.
Thanks. Thanks, brother. We'll see you soon, okay? Be safe, have fun, and Stitcher! We'll see you guys next time in the basement. Hey, thanks for checking out that video on our EPN channel. It's just one small part of the things that we make around here. So if you liked it, don't forget to check out some of our other vids and hit that subscribe button.